And action, and welcome everybody. This is PnP Weekly episode 180. We're closing 200 pretty fast. We need to ping at some point SIP, so we get the 200 episode recorded, because we promised that he will be the host on that one. It is 26th of September. I'm back from Orlando, which is beautiful. It was actually really cool conference, having close to 4,000 people actually joining and catching up on after 2.5 years of whatever, or 2 years of a break. That was really cool. Power Platform conference in Orlando last week. And Waldek, you're back from Hackathon. You're now catching up on things as well. So
exactly. I was away from work. I was still in my room. I was away from work doing different work, but it was really cool, right? So me and few others got to together to hack, to really code the whole week, which was really cool, right? So we went all the way from an idea on paper to something that actually works. We had a chance to show it to a few folks, and they were excited. So we really hope that we will be able to get it to a point where we can share it with everyone, so that everyone can benefit from the idea that we had. So fingers crossed, we will get to that point.
I think having these hacks is actually really great, because as we talked actually with Chirag, we'll introduce our visitor in a second, but as we talked with him, there are features. For example, one of the most successful Power Platform application apparently originally comes from a hackathon project, which is really cool. So of course, evolved a lot from there with all of the administrative things and governance in place, but original idea is from a hackathon, and that's actually really great. So having the 1 week and a small team to do something, and then do a proof of concept, and then we should probably fund this a bit more. Now it's actually making money, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so who knows, right?
Who knows? Yes, you'll be multi-billionaire pretty soon. As no.
I don't have that delusion. No.
Yes.
However, I mean, and it's the money. Yes, it has value. It's a meaningful thing to have, and we're spoiled to the point where we don't need to worry about it. But just the idea to be able to create something from nothing and get that to be shipped as a Microsoft thing, that's really cool already by itself.
Yep, that is really cool. Absolutely. Cool. Anyway, let's do a quick intro on the visitor, which we have, who is a independent consultant from UK, Chirag Patel. And we'll have a nice, because we already had the recording, so we'll have a nice discussion related on his career path, being an MVP, running an independent consulting, and doing a lot of migrations, and for example, discussions, is there still business in migrations or not? So let's actually jump on that interview, and we'll come back on the articles right after that. Excellent. So welcome, Chirag, on the show. Good to have you on the PnP Weekly, episode 180. We'll get you back sooner than 360 for sure. See, we promised that already when we start. But anyway, so
promises.
We can see actually MVP stamp on it back. We can see MCT on the background as well. Can you talk about Chirag? Who are you? What do you do for a living?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and great to be here. Been your followers for many years, and it's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, I'm Chirag Patel. I work with Patel Consulting as an independent contractor for the last 8 odd years, and generally, specializing in all things around collaboration, document management, various productivity services, covering all the good, platform services around Teams, SharePoint, and Power Platform. So generally, work with for the last 5 years, especially, been working with the renewable energy organizations, because that's obviously another industry that's just growing at an astonishing rate. So been fortunate enough to work on a project as a lead architect to do the both rolling out the services and at the same time divesting the organization. So that was a huge migration. So yeah, my specialty generally comes from migrations, as well as enhancing the existing investments to promote various business values. But yeah, 20 years is a long time. I've been here, and I kind of originally, for those who might be just briefly kind of sneaky interest, I started off as a SQL DBA.
Cool.
In those days, back in 2002, which is when I pretty much started, I actually took out a loan of £8,000 in those days, gave up my full-time work, and really committed to become a solution developer. MCSD, I think, in those days.
Yep.
So VB6, SQL Server 7, and then I just specialized in database administration. So that's pretty much where I started from. But yeah, I was fortunate to work with this huge organization called Salvation Army. And so I was there for 10 years. And boy, that was a ride, because not only managing the production databases, but obviously SharePoint team services around 2003 or 4 came into my kind of lap. And obviously my boss goes, you're a SQL DBA, so hey, SharePoint's the thing. And
almost the same thing, isn't it? So
and you're like none of these database makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Instead of working with tables, you work with team sites.
Yeah.
So you're like GUIDs as keys. Who thought of that?
And then you have a look on the SQL database, the database structure. You're like, what on earth?
Yeah. What do you mean I cannot query this? What do you mean I cannot query this?
Exactly. So it was really, kind of fun rides, and I think because obviously being an admin and overlapping with a couple of job roles there. And to be honest with you, a lot of it comes from a self-learning, right? I think a lot of us in the community, it's all about that. You kind of read up, try out things that other people have tried. So yeah, definitely long hours from my part to be able to learn about the product services. And then obviously I was also fortunate to be part of the adopter team for Content Management Server 2002 in those days, right? So Salvation Army on the roll for a huge public website. So again, a lot of learning curves there. Long story short, came to a point about 10 years in the role where I just thought I can't do DBA, can't do SharePoint admin, and SharePoint obviously has been growing from 2007 onwards hugely. So I decided to kind of quit the role before the 10-year marker hit. So 9.5 years, I just said, out of here.
Yeah,
I'm going to reinvent myself.
Well, do you know what? That's exactly what happened at that point, because then it was a choice for me, about something like 40 or something, thinking, what do I do? Here I am, kind of, before the midlife crisis hits and all that stuff. So I thought, look, I love my technical knowledge. I've got experience, constantly learning, and I even did a degree for business systems and analysis and design. So that was my third degree at the age of 35, part-time for 3 years. And that's pretty much when I decided I want to go into consultancy. So again, I worked with a small consultancy and the large, likes of Amanat and Accenture and others. So kind of did that for 2 years and working with various clients. So, that was pretty good. But again, no day is different to what you have with every consultancy day. So that's kind of, consultancy career kind of got invented for me personally in terms of doing all the good things. And then 2015 or thereabouts came about, thinking, even from Microsoft point of view, when Satya came in, Microsoft trying to reinvent and, all these things. So I thought, well, do I stick on SharePoint or do I go and do something else altogether, but still stick to consultancy? Kind of just, made the bold move. And I thought, what, I'm going to stay where I am, but I'll just morph into Office 365. So that's when I had my first project to migrate essentially from SharePoint 2003 to a BPOS, and before it kind of became Office 365. So since then, it's just like, constantly on the go with all the, changing of mindset of how all these features, platforms are rolling out. And then, well, the story, right? So it's kind of constantly on the go. Just don't take your hands off the ball, right? Just keep at it. And really, that comes about through speaking as well, because I've been speaking for about, I think, 10 odd years now. And that's where most of my learning comes, just to really even connect to all the good speakers we have. And, we got some old time speakers. You probably know who they are, as I call them, usual suspects, But
some of them are in Germany this week, so I guess so.
Yeah. So, you know what? This is the thing. So I owe it to the community greatly. Books are there for sure. Certification courses are there, but nothing like what I've learned from the community. And that's what I try and give back through various ways, And so one of the things I do is I organize and run M365 UK. So it's an online user group, and really kind of just hit that because of the pandemic, and I just felt there was nothing happening a lot in the UK. So on a monthly basis, kind of just gave my bandwidth away really to do all that, and that's been really super good. So yeah, it's variety is the spice of life. It's pretty much what I've been doing, I would say.
Yeah. I guess it's a kind of a typical growth pattern for a, how would I say, ex-SharePoint specialist, then to grow to be Microsoft 365 generalist. Is that a good way of saying that?
Yeah, absolutely, because I never deep dive into, Teams is obviously what I love and what I do and every day. And yeah, that's another story in terms of where that's gone from the last 4 years or so. But yeah, in my role, certainly, I've got to keep the breadth as much as I could, but still be able to deep dive and have those conversations, with the customers and other partners that I work with to at least be able to kind of guide them in their journeys. But definitely technically hands-on, IT pro pretty much is where I do. Again, don't write a developer code, but I think, PnP PowerShell has been the savior, right?
That's knowing the usage curve of that, yes, it's a savior for a lot of people. It's just absolutely insane how widely that's being used. So
the one thing I wanted to ask you about, right, because you mentioned being an architect on Microsoft 365, or you could even say Microsoft Cloud, right? Because 365 often includes things on Azure, being serverless,
AAD,
identity, Power Platform, and all of that. How do you stay on top of everything, that's new, available to customers? Because like in the past, like you would read a book and you would know everything about everything. And for 3 years, you would be good and you would be able to, form opinions, good practices, bad practices, the do's and the don'ts. Whereas here, every week there is a release. Every month there is something new. Every day you wake up, it's like, I didn't know
Where's
about
the
X.
button?
How do you?
Yeah, where did the button go now?
How do you give that place in your work and the way you form advice to customers?
Great question, right? And there is no real secret around it, other than I think it's probably down to my work patterns. I'm one of those guys, like many of you, I'm sure. 5 o'clock in the morning is the time I get up, right? to try and do some of the learning. So most of my learning comes in that early hours. But you know what? I think in order to at least even subscribe to various sources of info and everything that you have, and I would probably say Twitter is probably the biggest gem for this. Now, when I say Twitter, depending on how you use it, right? So a lot of the time I've subscribed to all the sources, all the Microsoft blogs, as well as some third parties. So there's a constant feed going on there. And yes, for sure, there is RSS feeds that, you probably use your favorite tooling. So for me, there is a pattern of going through some of the daily ones, as well as on a weekly basis. And that's where a lot of that updates come in. We do have the message center, as well as, all the conference announcements and, with Ignite just coming around the corner. So it's kind of almost just working out, because I tend to attend all these conferences, give up my time, never try and do multitask by attending the conference. And to me, that's one of the things that don't try and multitask with a lot of these events and the time that you reserve to read all your materials. So that's kind of where it comes from. And then a lot of it is I use the FAB acronym, which, everything's a feature and platform. But what does that mean? Why should somebody even care about that? So it's obviously, FAB, which I use a feature. What is the advantages and what's the benefit of that feature? So for me, is working the other way around to try and say, well, okay, this thing has come in, why should it matter? Talking to customers in that language, advantages and benefits of that particular way really helps, because then I talk about feature afterwards. So simple principles, just like along those lines, which I tend to cover off and try and retain that as well.
I have to say that's actually a good way of approaching the new features from consulting perspective, especially. Talk about the new benefits which are available for customers rather than, hey, here's an API, which is like, cool, there's an API, so what?
Why?
So
yeah.
But that's for sure a kind of a classic consulting good practice for sure. Being an ex-consultant, recovering consultant still, so I probably can never shake it away. So from the past, I saw even some familiar company names from your LinkedIn profile, which I used to work for years as well. So it's actually there's a connection. So well, it's a small world. So. Anyway,
well, I think you probably know. Sorry, just to interrupt there. Yeah, I think you probably know when I think we were both at Shell, for example. I think in those back in 2012, right? I think it was thereabouts where common customer conversations was, I have all my full trust code solutions, and now what? You want me to take all that into cloud, which was not supported. So those kind of things.
Well, that ties in nicely as a donkey preach, like we say in Dutch, to the segue
and finish
to the migration storyline. You talked that you're doing a lot of migrations and migration work. What does that mean in practice? So how does the work look like, and what kind of migrations are those?
Sure. So a lot of the migrations that I've been either as a very small team who's pretty much myself just doing all kinds of roles. There's the architecture, but what does that land that we're going to land on, what that looks like, and what that transformation looks like. And in a lot of the cases, the transformation wise, they want to be able to not just lift and shift, right? They want to be able to try and make magic, because that's where the value is. Given the time frame which they don't want to move around, you have to make that call and advise the project accordingly. So that tends to be always a challenging part in terms of what that new world will look like when you migrate SharePoint content, which is majority of the times the work that I do. But then you get in, especially the last couple of years, which I've been doing through the divestment. That's where the teams, even Planner and Exchange, all the other workloads have come in, because essentially just emptying out the whole M365, including Power Platform. So those kind of things begs a different question, because even though it's a migration from A to B, and not just technically the artifacts, but also having the right resource power to be able to manage that, because more often than not, the training element, it's always left to the end. So very first recommendation, I always say, go to the training, get to know the product, not in its entirety, but at least understand some of the basics from that. So that tends to happen a lot early days of the migration, and then come back to the migration and being able to work and follow those teams. So, again, the tools are there, popular tools, ShareGate, HavePoint and others, Quest and all that. And again, that tends to be the exercise, why should I use some of those tools? Why can't I just do these things myself? I've got all those native tools built in M365 free. That's a shift there. But in reality, a lot of the projects, this is my personal view, I think it's more about they want to just get the job done as quickly as possible.
Right.
Do that, which is good, because time is money, right? So
sure. How do you?
Interesting point, right? Because so when you think about migration, right? Like one of the probably key parts is adoption. You used to do something one way, we're going to do it a different way. How do you see that? Like, because as you said, it's a lot. And like the first part is to learn about the new product you're going to use, but then you kind of have the pitfall of trying to learn everything about everything, and then it feels like you get this very steep learning curve before you even start doing anything. So how do you balance it out, and what tips do you have for the customers with whom you work when it comes to adoption of services in the cloud that are continuously evolving?
Because I have to just, before you answer, because the divergence between the on-premises and cloud is growing all the time, because the on-premises obviously isn't evolving that much, or maybe a bit, because there's a subscription edition for SharePoint Online if somebody's upgrading. But cloud is going full in, and a lot of innovations coming in on there. It's an interesting challenge for sure.
interesting, and I think it's also exciting, right? And I think in terms of just to answer those along those lines, typically, I mean, yeah, from a user level point of view, so if I was to split the organization into various groups, so you got your leadership, the leadership, the program management sort of thing, the management area, and then you got your rest of the users, who are kind of operations doing their day-to-day tasks. One of the first things, and believe it or not, I mean, this tends to work, and there's no real magic bullet for that adoption, because treat it or not, it's a journey, right? There is no end in sight at all. But usually what it is the competitiveness, because for sure M365 is there, and like you say, constantly innovations being rolled out, and the value for it, for what you're paying. So for me, it's about look, if you don't use these areas of technologies, you're going to be outperformed, right, competitively, because your competitors are already using it, making a kind of really good value out of that. So that's one of the things to really kick in and at least embed in their kind of the culture side of things, to say that you're not just here for day, year or what have you. But also at the same time, because the workforce is changing constantly, so how do you keep up with those adoption journeys around that? And again, it starts from those high-level use cases. Why do I use SharePoint? Why do I use Teams? Yes, collaboration, the magic word, is always there. We used to be able to collaborate 20 years ago, right?
Yep.
Right. Well, but there's an interesting point, right? So how do you see, has the past 2.5 years change the way you approach adoption and the way customers with whom you work look at adoption?
Very good, very challenging. So look, I think in terms of a lot of the time, the viewpoint from customers adoption is like a project itself, right? In a sense that the mixing up of training versus support. Now, that's obviously, again, I've been lucky enough to be part of the organization where things were rolled out already, and in terms of making it more advantageous for them to be able to connect through the telephony and all the content materials that they have, albeit through SharePoint, Teams, Viva, the Viva connections, for example, for the employee intranet side of things. So that's been good from that front. But for any organizations who's trying to get into it, or at least to try and manage that adoption journeys with everything that's going on, I think parts of it, that's been really challenging itself, because not knowing where they're actually heading towards, and with the whole idea of employee experiences side of things, because pretty much everyone's been affected in some ways, right? There's different kinds of stress in your day-to-day or week by week types of work. So from that, I think it's just kind of being protecting the focus around what they do, that makes it work for them. Some people, they just tend to leave, right? Because they either find that technology burden is so much that hampers them to do their work that they want to do. So mixed, kind of a mixed bag on that. So from an adoption point of view, I would probably stick to the similar methodology around, what is that you have, why you're using it, and then being able to target various points of adoptions around that, whether that's kind of crash courses or kind of exciting, with what's coming around, especially with some of the updates we had last week from, say, the Microsoft Viva, some of the things that might come into next year. So again, preparing them, you're going to get surprised again next year. So that's a difficult thing to do, to embed that kind of mentality.
Yeah. Now, how do you see the migration, let's say, demand? Are we already past the peak of the migration? You're based in UK, right? So UK is a huge market area, and I would say I wouldn't say that it's not in the head of the adoption curves always, but it's following up a bit later, comparing the Netherlands or Scandinavia, because those are typically the ones which are adapting faster. But how do you see the demand for migration? So is there still growing demand on the migration side, or are we already past the peak, and then the rest is a follow, or where are we within the UK?
Yeah, I think, look, the demand is there, right? I think if you look at from an industry sectors, I mean, public sector, obviously they kind of really jumped on a lot of this, the programs on M365. But then there are some specific organizations who are still on-prem. I mean, I think one of the last on-prem work that I did was back in, I think, 2016, 2017 time. Since then, I haven't not even had the opportunity to look at it because either they've got double installations on-prem and the cloud to separate their data for some of the reasons that they have to keep things away. But at the same time, then you're getting hampered by the innovations, right? But now what I'm finding, certainly, and just from my own experience because of the divestments, is that you got organizations now being either been merged or been split out because a lot of these organizations are struggling in a ways because of the times that we're in. So with that comes the opportunities to not just work with your M365, but also you're splitting that tenant now to serve those business objectives around selling the arm of that company, right? So I think in that sense, those migrations are still there as opposed to the traditional on-prem to the cloud. So you kind of, if you like, having those more opportunities for migrations within the cloud itself. So yeah, definitely.
So tenant to tenant migration and splits and all of that. But now, Chirag, also one thing what we wanted to talk about is the fact that you've been an independent consultant now for 8 years, unless I'm completely mistaken, reading on the CV. See, we're doing research behind of the scenes. So
as we go on the fly.
Very good,
yes.
Very good.
Our research team did a research.
Yeah, exactly.
And we heard some good talk about you. No, we did. But anyway, so how do you? What would be the considerations of going independent? Because I know there's a lot of consultants who have a similar background as you do, doing consulting in Avanade or Accenture or smaller and larger customers, and there's always advantages in a larger ones and smaller ones. But then you made the decision of going independent. You probably went through some, let's say, am I ready for it? What are the readiness? What would be the things to consider when you want to go independent?
Yeah, and look, great. I think, in a sense that, because there is a lot of opportunities out there. I think what sometimes lacks is, I think, that self-confidence, because naturally as humans, we want to, we have that bit of fear, right? Will I be able to do this? Will I be able to face the customer? Will I be able to even run a meeting? So all those questions will either come about through their gut instincts. What I would say, for me, the path was, and I would still say still easy for anybody, because now you have the ability for anyone who's able to take on a lot of the work that goes on. For sure, for example, technical aspects of it is what you got to be good at in terms of what you got to do, because I think the soft skills around the consultancy, whether that's writing proposals, designs, talking to customer, engaging, and all those things, that can come a bit after. But if you know as an individual that you're good at what you do and you've got that experience to back you up, working through either many organizations or, in my case, very few, but even though in one organization I did quite a lot. So once you got that technical experience, then you know that even through your own experiences, you probably have had meetings, you've probably written documentations, but then it's kind of almost unfolding that to bring that into a more formal way in that consultancy world.
Yep.
And you probably know, in the consultancy, we like to do things in a certain way, make sure there's checklists, there is, there's expectations to be managed if you plan something. So those things will not come natural, but they can definitely be learned on the job, of course. But if you're part of a consultancy, and there are a lot of consultancies who are taking on, a lot of folks, if they know somebody who's really good, either with SharePoint or Teams. So, if you're doing that already, and if you got your blog, people will really see that you're really valuing as a technical individual. And I think the opportunity is definitely there. I went on because I wanted to do things my way. I follow a lot of consultants, even Waldek yourself, because I know you are like a blogging machine with SharePoint framework, for example.
Yep.
So, I mean, you've been around, for a long, long time. It doesn't matter whether you work for large or small consultancies, but you work with alongside another consultants. And I did that for 2 years. And so you pick up how this is to be done. So you've got to have that passion again, even as a consultant, and not just a technical passion, because ultimately, for me, it's about solving the business problems and also educate the customers so that they can make use of their tech even more. And that's pretty much what drives me.
Yeah. Are there any kind of a main, let's say, challenges which you've run into? If I understood the situation correctly, you've been kind of in this lucky situation where you have a few customers who really want your demand, so you don't have to worry or search for customers. Is that the case, or any other challenges what you've been having into as being an independent?
Yeah, I would probably say in the beginning, because especially, with the challenges would be that you want to make sure you get paid, right? So, unlike when you're a permanent employee, then you've got a set salary that's going to come with your performance. With consultancy in the beginning, that really hits you hard because you almost have to predict what you're going to be worth after a year, after 2 years, right? And yes, you can do a lot of marketing, either through various ways of either speaking engagements, getting your name out. But once you kind of get over a few contracts, which is tends to be 3 months, 6 months, or what have you, then you got that enough to grow the confidence to be able to seek out a lot of work. And much of my work as independent comes through either various Microsoft partners, both through consulting and training as well. And the other part is more about tapping into that industry that you're already working with. So, renewable energy is what I've been doing for the 5 years. So I've had a couple of clients who've actually approached me just on the grounds of the work that I've done. So, LinkedIn, Twitter, they all work. People may say, Twitter is almost dead, what have you. Take it or leave it, right? But it does work.
Yep.
Right. Well,
yeah.
I won. One thing that we didn't talk about yet, and I guess that we have roughly time left for that. You're also, among many things you're also an MVP. How did you what was your journey towards becoming an MVP, and how becoming an MVP changed or didn't change the way you work, your network, your knowledge, your customer work?
Yeah, look, listen, I frankly, I never wanted to be an MVP, right? I never even applied for it before. I kind of enjoyed what I was doing, few speaking engagements, and obviously, I think, and I owe it to Chris Hall and in terms of kind of pushing me towards that to say, look, do it. There are, for various benefits that there are. So kind of for 3 years now, even before the user group started. But because my main contributions, I would probably say, is around speaking at various community events, and that's what I do. Still love it. That's how I get to share all these things, just like many speakers we have. But yeah, there is no secret recipe, of course, because it's Microsoft, and I guess the supporters or endorsers who will actually nominate. But once I got the few endorsements, the likes of Patrick and Addis and Paul Hunt and others, I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe I should just go for it, but not for the purposes of having the badge, but more about to understand what goes inside Microsoft. And more importantly, what is it that I can actually contribute towards that, through all the, product improvements and all the other areas, but also being able to work with and get to know more MVPs as well, in terms of how this world of MVP family kind of really works. So for me, it's been valuable because, for example, we got an event coming up on the 12th of November, our Viva Explorers Community Day. So it's all things Microsoft Viva. Now that event probably wouldn't have happened in a way that if I was not MVP, then I would have not been in a position to work with other MVPs to, bring all this into fruition. So definitely, yeah, absolutely, it helps. But you know what? It's also hard work because I think the expectation also builds up. Because there is that element of saying, you want to try and keep up as much as you can. The big world of NDA is a very soft one because you have to be very careful what you don't share, and sometimes the thoughts trigger, and you say, "Okay, now hold on." So, you know,
it
all those things
happens,
is
and mistakes
right?
happen. It's okay. So it's life. So not in your case necessarily, but things, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So
yeah. So you know what I think I would say. So for anybody who's out there, you don't have to be a consultant or even like long time in the industry to be an MVP. If you have, you know, the good valuable content that you kind of do what you love, then I think, you know, time will come. You know, we now live in a world where there's more MVPs, so people recognize a lot of the opportunities. So I've had the pleasure to even nominate, you know, Zoe Wilson for what the work she's been doing for many years. So she got MVP for now 2 years, and then obviously recently Leon as well, who's working with SharePoint Syntax. You know, and so people will recognize what you do, and we all meet up in some community events as well. So it's what's not to love.
Related on that one, just a kind of a final question. You did mention that you enjoy speaking, you meet people, you network in those events and everything else. And do those events and speaking engagements, like the user groups and everything, do they actually generate business as well? You kind of touched that, but just trying to elaborate that a bit. Is it a worthwhile, or is it just for fun, or is it just for
in other words, exactly, like what is the value of doing all that extra curricular work for your business?
Yeah, look, I think for me, there's two things, right? Firstly, it's more about, you know, a form of training. So for me as a consultant, even though I attend some of the formal trainings, but a lot of that comes through this community speaking engagement, attending a few sessions, and also being able to talk to other folks in there to understand where we are on the landscape, and really kind of preparing those questions, right, to be able to ask those, because nothing worse than asking random questions and not really getting what the answers you seek out for. So for me, that's the key part, and that's pretty much what I do a lot of these events, both online as well as the in-person ones. But the second part is the learning, because I learn because I know if others are successful and they've got their own experiences on that. Business-wise, I've never sponsor. I mean, I'm just a one-man band, right? But I could, if I wanted to put out my Patel Consulting stand out there or sponsor, and I never get involved in those parts. You know, and different people will have different choices. I know there are some MVPs out there who constantly bang on about their company brand and on everything, and I won't name them. But that's just like, you know, for me, I don't like to mix the two. You know, community stays where it is, and that's what I enjoy, and that's what I get that. But as soon as that gets diluted by bringing the commercial bits in there, for me, that's like no different to any other organization out there who will just promote their company benefits on the back of the community, right? So for me, no. So for me, generating business will come from people doing my work, you know. So LinkedIn, like you mentioned, Vesa, there, you know, I tend to seek recommendations, and that is my source of the testimonials from the customers. So you'll probably see, you know, for the viewers here, you know, to just go and seek out, and don't get paid for writing those testimonials. You know, it is what it is, how they've said it. So yeah, but if I wanted to grow a business, then I would probably employ a marketing team and the sales director, right?
And the first thing they would tell you is to go promote your business in the community. You say no.
No, I don't think that was the idea.
Exactly.
Now, just out of curiosity, that's a final question, because you said something really interesting there as well.
Third final question.
Third final question. You said if you would like to grow your business, you would do certain things. Being an independent consultant, being an independent for a while now, you basically made a knowingly decision that you want to be by yourself and independent and not grow a business. Why is that? What's the thinking behind of that? Because for a younger audience who might be listening, that might be like, why would you? So just elaborate
absolutely.
on that.
Why do you not want to be rich, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, absolutely. Look,
Well, define rich, right?
Yeah,
Elon
absolutely.
Musk
Well,
rich, of course.
yeah. No, look, fair questions. These are all, valid ones, right? Because I've had there's a couple of things around that, which kind of I've seen somebody who's just a solution architect, who just like myself, on his own, went on to kind of grow the business, and got in few people and marketing and everything else, and only 5 years later, that person being totally burnt out, sold the company and just goes and does something different.
Yep.
So for me, I guess there's that bit of fear that if I grow my business, I'll get involved more in the business management side of things, and I'll be honest, I'm not that, because I'm a technical person. Yeah, for sure, there's some business stuff I can do around that, but that's okay. But that's where I want to be. So technical over that business. Secondly, is something I kind of practice around, and I use the acronym. I'm all up for acronyms, right? As we are the tech.
We Microsoft people, we love that. So
So for me,
acronyms.
So for me, it's staying in that good form, and form, I spell that as, family, occupation, recreation. So that's all the community activities and charity work that I do. And M is the money. Money is only as good as if it's going to satisfy with what you want, right? So I love my cricket. I love traveling. Love all the things that I do. So for me, it's that form that comes all in one place, and for me, it's to maintain that. So yeah, money is important to pay the bills, everything else, but I know I've got the work, which is a big part of it, anyways, that I do. So for me, that's what keeps me going, and being able to kind of satisfy on that. If I wanted to work for a larger company, I could do that, because I might not stay independent forever, because at some point, you want to kind of be around with people. So I could probably go with a larger company or whatever. So yeah, maybe not for everyone, but for me, that's the formula that really works. So and that's what really keeps me going every time, taking selfies with people and community events and all these things, because people are the key, right, to be around.
Yep. People are for sure the best part of this business as well, and it's all about people business. It's just all about, that's what consulting and IT is all about, making features and capabilities for people who then use them and helping them to succeed. Really, really cool. But thank you, Chirag. Really, really cool discussion. Good to have you in the show. Anything interesting happening this week? And let's do a quick round of a weekly. Anything on your mind? Getting prepared on something or something interesting?
Yeah. Well, I think Microsoft Viva is a hot topic right now, amongst other things. And certainly, I think, from last Thursday, we heard about some of the announcements and updates.
A massive amount of blog posts. It's like,
yeah, well, tell me about it. It is, and I think in terms of, again, for different organizations, they might not want to take all of that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think for me, it's some of the key events that's coming up. So which I hope to share a lot of that, because I've got some trials going on with some of the organizations on Viva topics, as well as the Viva Insights. So Collab Days in UK coming up on the 5th of October. So I'm doing a Viva Essentials there. And then I've got South Coast Summit in Southampton. So again, me, Zoe, Kevin are doing a Viva workshop on that one of the days. And then we got a session as well around all things Viva, everything, right? So with that, we got that 12th of November, Viva Explorers Community Day, and then you got the European SharePoint conference in Copenhagen as well. So again, two sessions we got there as well. So it's kind of, and the reason why this is end up in this way, because I think there's a huge influx of info coming, right, for organizations. I still get people asking, what is this Viva thing, right? And believe me or not, it is like, why do I use it? If I've got my own calendar.
Yeah.
That
makes perfect sense.
Where they are, I can just get to it, right? So yeah, interesting. So yeah, watch the space. But absolutely. So And then Teams as well. So I'm looking forward to Ignite to see what's going to get announced there as well. So
Yep.
Which is
Ignite
in 2 weeks. I'll be in Manchester as well for that.
Just around the corner. That is a good donkey bridge, Waldek, to you. You've been helping with some of the Ignite announcements actually, and the demos there, right?
Yes, exactly. A little. And I mean, they are not my to unveil, so we will keep it exactly at that.
In here, so. But thank you for helping with some of that stuff. So really cool.
Absolutely. And then another thing, like you mentioned, the announcements, gajillions of blog posts. I missed all of them. Last week, I lived literally under a rock. So at Microsoft last week, we had Hackathon week. And I managed to minimize the number of meetings and hours and emails and everything, and just basically spend like solid chunk of week working on code. So together with few other folks, we've built something new and exciting. Right now, it's an internal tool that we hope to have the room to pitch, and we really hope that we'll be able to share it with everybody else, because the few folks with whom we had the ability to share it, like they were like, when is it out? And it's like, hold on a moment, not yet, but like your feedback helps us to drive that internally. So yeah, I'm still pumped from the last week being able to, like, we would start the week with an idea on paper and end the week with a prototype that works, right? And that already solves problems people have. So it's a really exciting way to, also, like, building code at Microsoft is not my job day to day, right? Yeah. Yes, I build code, but it's samples, whereas this is a new product, right? So it would be a really exciting thing to, see it out there and see, like, how can we bring it to fruition to actually become a thing that we ship to everybody else. So these will be, the kind of going back from that week of building something to now trying to formulate it and bring it to a pitch, and then get back to reality, and get back to work.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So the story goes that one of the big features and products in Power Platform is actually originally a hackathon project. So the hackathon projects are actually a super cool way in Microsoft where people can test out things and then potentially get a funding for it. So it's a really cool thing for sure. So
really good mechanism.
Cannot go to too much detail on which one and where, because then anyway, that's a separate discussion. For me, for the next this week, last week I was in a Power Platform conference in Orlando. Good way of catching up with people. We'll see you, Chirag, for sure in Copenhagen, which is a great time to catch up. But this one was mainly Northern American people and of course some Europeans and a lot of MVPs, and it was obviously it was about Power Platform. So me within my role, it's more we're visitors and guests there, not taking the bigger stage except helping Jeff Deeper in a keynote. But being traveling, it means that there's a pile of messages and things to catch up. It's just we'll get this sorted out. So
Mark all is red.
Mark all is red. That does.
If there's anything urgent, you will hear about it.
You were in one of the email threads last week, and you probably realized that you cannot just mark everything.
No. It works in theory.
It works in theory, but then I have a bad habit of being the switchboard on a lot of the things. So it's just making sure that things are actually moving forward, and it's fine.
You're good at it, right? You've been doing it for many years.
Sure. That is true. That's true for sure. But anyway, thank you, Chirag. Thank you for joining us. Really cool discussion. Really cool to catch up, and all the best for the business as well. We'll see you in Copenhagen next time, face to face.
That's great. Thank you, Vesa. Thank you, Waldek. Really appreciate it, and enjoy your hard work that you put in over the years and even now. So keep it going, and see you soon.
Thanks, Chirag.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Excellent. Thank you, Chirag, one more time. Really, really cool to catch up as well. We'll get you back from the show for sure sooner or later. We will probably keep on doing this for a while still, right, Waldek? It's a promise.
I hope so.
As long as we have something to talk about, no, just kidding.
It's been 84 years.
Yes. Cool. Should we jump on the articles? We should.
Let's do that.
Okay, so let me share my screen and let's start with a Microsoft 365 update. Then we'll do some Power Platform, and then we go with Viva. So and then community articles. A lot of articles this week from Microsoft. There was a lot of announcements. So two main topics. One around the Microsoft Viva. And the second part is around the Power Platform announcements, which are really, really cool. So first of all, this is an article from Seth Patton around the bigger thinking around the Microsoft Viva announcements on new features, and kind of calling out the Viva, the updates on the Viva goals, updates on the Viva Pulse, which is a new application. So we're adding new functionalities and Viva modules in. We're including new capabilities in Viva Engage. We introduced a new Viva Amplify, which is a new application as well. So we're running out of this just new Viva modules being in here and there. A lot of interesting capabilities. Also improvements in Viva Learn, also improvements in Viva Topics, and improvements in Viva Connection as well. But this is the main article, which is referencing then all of the other articles, which we'll quickly scan through later today. Now, because I opened up these and you didn't see them, let me actually cover at least this one. So Charles Lamanna is the CVP on the Power Platform side. He was in the Power Platform conference in Orlando last week as well, had his keynote where a lot of these capabilities were actually covered and really focused on new features. So last Tuesday in the Power Platform conference, there was close to 4,000 people attending live in Orlando, which is really cool. And they announced new features like Power upskilling programs, so making sure that people can find a new careers and helping people to transition to a new opportunities, new career opportunities. A lot of new features like cards for Power Apps. And these are basically low-code cards which end users or the Power users can actually create and design and then surface them inside of the individual services with the Microsoft 365. So really, really cool stuff as well. Co-authoring in Power Apps, enhanced SAP integration, which is really, really cool as well for the Power Automation and Power Platform in general. Integrated virtual agents, Power Apps, improvements there as well, and a lot of stuff and cool things which were getting announced.
Pretty cool.
Now, I open up a few of these. So Power Apps brings, this is from Ryan Cunningham, related on the three main announcements on Power Apps. So cards for Power Apps, which is really cool, co-authoring, maker matching. We're not going to deep dive on all of these things, but it's actually really cool that now we have a designer in the Power Apps for this card. So adaptive cards-driven experiences. And of course, there's already discussion that, for example, can we integrate this together with Viva Connection cards and all of that. So there would be further synergies between the products. Not yet, but in talks internally. And a lot of other cool things as well. So as said, let's not deep dive all of them because we have so many announcements today to cover through. And then related on SAP integration, there was a separate product update article, which is basically there's a pre-built Power Apps for common SAP processes. SAP is one of the most widely adapted and used. What is it? Business application, business process?
ERP, I guess, right?
ERP,
like
yeah, enterprise. Yeah. What's ERP in
resource planning? ERP.
Yeah. But a lot of automation, a lot of connections.
TLA, a three-letter acronym.
Yes, SAP. But a lot of additional integrations to natively within SAP with connectors and everything else. And that's actually really cool. So the Microsoft has worked closely together with SAP to get all of these capabilities in place. So awesome stuff to make the integration scenarios even better. Now, we also had an interesting announcement. This is something which is based on an internally used tooling in Microsoft.
Exactly. So there is new module in Viva, which is all about people, right? So it helps you navigate through the org chart of your company and basically find who is who and where they are in the org and what they do. But there's actually more, right? So in here, you also have the ability to integrate it with topics, right? So you can find people more easily who work on specific thing or who have specific skills. So with that, basically helping you to do, like bridge the gaps in a way or find people who you need in your org.
Yeah, Yeah, we've been having this kind of a similar kind of tool internally in Microsoft for a while, which I use on a daily basis because you always want to check out, hey, where is this person, and it relates on all of the things. So, and it's great to see that this is natively coming out now, part of the Microsoft Viva. Then we had a update related on Microsoft Viva Engage. There's a nice video which is actually getting embedded in many of these blog posts. But Michael Holst is basically covering the greatest improvements in the Viva Engage, which has it in origins or behavior from the Yammer side, but now it's getting more natively integrated directly into Microsoft Teams as well. So really cool. I see people internally using Viva Engage more and more for blog posts and announcements and all of that stuff, kind of a personal messaging and all of that, so which is really cool as well. So awesome improvements.
Yep.
Then there was a update for the Microsoft Viva Connection and daily briefing email.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's another example of a feature that we had internally for a while, basically doing a dog food, right? So using the products that we would ship eventually at some point in order to improve it, right? But it's a great way for you to basically stay on top of the work around you. And it gives you a number of different tips around the meetings you have planned, interactions you had with others, and so forth and so on. So it's really meant as bringing to your fingertips the things that are relevant to you for this day based on upcoming meetings, past tasks, whether you want to book time for focus on learning or catching up with your email if you've been on a trip and you happen to come back to a non-empty inbox.
Yep.
Like some of us. Yep. Right. So basically trying to help you, like in a way being your personal assistant of sorts.
Yep. That's really cool on the absolutely on the email side. And then the big big one here is the Viva Home.
Exactly. So in the past, when we talk about Viva connections, it was an experience you would need to stand up and basically give it a shape, like fill it with cards, do your own work to basically tailor it to your needs. With Viva Home, we bring Viva kind of step forward where we offer you a turnkey experience to Viva, right, to all the news and cards and apps. And from that, you can extend it, right? So you don't need to set the first step. It's on by default, I guess. Is that the thing? Yeah. And then you can tailor it to your needs.
Yes, exactly. And of course, the dashboard here is the similar kind of dashboard as we have already in Viva Connection. And so you can build SPFX components for it, which are then being exposed or connected to APIs and all of that. So a lot of interesting opportunities there for our partners. Now, one thing what I want to call out because I got questions on it already in Twitter and a few other channels is that there will be configuration options. So those customers who already adapted the Viva Connection as it is currently, they can choose, will they keep on having that as an option together with this, or will they want to have this? And then when you click that link over there, you will be redirected to the portal. And so there will be options in a tenant level for addressing what is the chosen path. We understand that depending on a customer size, is it a small, mid-sized, large enterprise customer, they have different needs and different requests on how things should be evolving. And therefore, we want to have those options available.
Exactly.
So. Good. Then we had an updates around the answers or announcing answers in Microsoft Viva, and this kind of relates on the topics experiences. So on top of the bringing centralized information in the context of multiple applications. So having questions and surfacing them in the right location, and organizing questions and solution. Connecting to existing knowledge and experiences. So basically surfacing the questions in the existing capabilities as well, but then surfacing them as topics, for example, for a specific topics in the Viva topic. Does that make sense? Kind of. It does.
Yes.
It's
everything
all getting more and more connected.
Is a topic and everything is a question. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, on the Viva topic, there was also a lot of new announcements and capabilities and features available.
Exactly. So this article, I think, builds on top of the other one about answers, engaging it, and how you tie that to people, right? Because at the end of the day, a big aspect of the knowledge are the experts you have, right? So being able to find them, who they are, where they are. Like a big aspect of that is to be able to open somebody's person card and be able to see the topics in which they are experts directly on their card. So among their, about info, they are in your org, what files they work on, and so forth and so on. Also having these topics of which they are experts, having in there directly, tying them again to topics, and building like that the kind of knowledge network in your org.
Really, really cool. Awesome to see this one as well. So a lot of new features and capabilities, which are getting, all of the products are getting more and more integrated between each other. So which is awesome. Now, we also had a new article from Mark Cashman from 15th of September, because we recorded on 15. We haven't actually covered this, but this is a great, actually, a podcast with a Kerry and Jay, and talking about the experiences of implementing our Microsoft HR Web on top of the SharePoint. So the learnings around that one, there's a full article in a separate blog related on that one. Microsoft have more than 160,000 employees, well, vendors and full-time. It really depends on, I can't remember what's the right number and worldwide, but still, all of those typically need to get access on HR information and how we built that, how does it actually work, and the learnings on it. So really, really cool portal story as well. Then we had some news on the really cool new features on the Microsoft Teams.
Exactly. I mean, we don't need to go deep dive on them. So let's do a quick skimming, right? So first one is you have the ability to share information to Teams from a personal app or tab, right? So you can think of it like, imagine you've built a web app, right? And you expose it as a Teams tab. In that app, right, you have the ability to share a card, a piece of info, a video, whatever you have in there, share it to Teams. And that allows you to pop up a dialogue which you don't need to build by yourself. So it's an embeddable experience in your app that allows you to really easily share the content from your app into Teams without having to copy paste links, because that is so 2021, I guess.
So old school, 2021. So
yes, exactly. So that is number one. There are other features too, right?
This one is really cool as well. So
yeah, exactly. Like one thing that we have the ability to do now is to record a meeting, and after that you will get a transcript, right? And the cool thing is that now that there's an API that allows you to retrieve transcript after the meeting for analysis. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff like who's talking for how much, and maybe give presenter tips or tips that will help everybody during the meeting have a voice, or sentiment analysis, or whatever kind of analysis you can imagine on what has been said during a meeting, right? So this is a really cool API that is also now available to developers in Teams.
Really, really cool stuff. And then we had the third one. You want to talk about this one as well? This is, there we go.
Exactly. So this is just a simple thing where, exactly. So from your app, you are now able to control audio in Teams, right? So you can mute, unmute, and do all that from your app. So again, something that many folks have been asking for a long time. It's available now in Teams too.
Really, really cool. Awesome stuff. Now, a few community articles. So Rodrigo Pinto had a nice article related on managed identities and PnP PowerShell. So really walking through what is it, why would I care, how does it actually work, and how would I actually use it. So really good scenarios on that. Thank you, Rodrigo, on that one. Awesome stuff. Good to see that the badges here are available as well. By the way, if you are contributing on our community channels, you are able to get the badges from Credly, which is really, really cool. Thank you, Rodrigo, on showcasing that as well. Then we had an article from Lorian Strand
about where in the world is my Teams conversation, right? And the point being here is that if people from different tenants, different companies, different orgs discuss together on Teams, where does that discussion live? Like, on which tenant is it? Is it a chat? Is it a group chat? Like, how do you need to be signed in to tenant A to be able to talk to tenant B? So all the caveats around that. This article goes through the different scenarios and different cases and caveats and things to take into account. So really interesting and I think that this is especially applicable if you are a partner or consultant and you work with other orgs, right? Like that is really a typical case,
And these are actually really interesting. Person A in tenant D as a guest and person B in the tenant D as a guest. Where does the discussion go? Where is it actually?
It's in a cloud.
Tenant? Yeah, it's in a cloud.
It's in tenant C.
Yeah, it might be. That's true. Now, really good as well. So AC Andrew Connell from Voitanos had a blog post related on register SPFX list form customizers with a SharePoint REST API. So it talks about one option of registering SPFX list form customizers and how that can be done. He has developed also a nice small application to make that happen. So you can actually more efficiently and easily associate a custom form to a list. That's something what you would be doing in a content type object level for updating that entries and the properties in right place. But thank you, AC, on spending time on explaining that. Then we had something from Peter Winstra.
Exactly. So in Power Automate, how would you update an item in an array in one step? So if you have this case, this is NuGet, a snack size post that gives you exactly the answer to that one scenario. Check it out.
Yep. Yeah, really cool. Thank you, Peter, on that one. Ika Bass had a really cool blog post on building seamless automations to boost productivity with Microsoft Graph, Azure Event Hubs, and functions. And I guess the picture is probably the easiest way to explain this, which is basically as we are having new operations happening in the Microsoft Graph, we can then place entries in the Event Hub and then eventually surfacing them in the Microsoft Teams. So basically a synchronous way of feeding messages in the Microsoft Teams so that people get notifications on that side. So really, really cool stuff on that one. Thank you, Ika, on explaining the process and model and all of the details. Paolo Pialorsi had a new blog post, video.
Exactly.
A blog post.
So
it's a video.
This time, it's a blog video. A video. In this video, he talks about how can you customize forms with SPFX and the dynamic form control from the PnP React controls family, right? So it's really interesting case. Like, do you need to build a form by yourself manually? Or how can you use some of the tools that are available to you and do it in a different way? Maybe that is, more efficient. Maybe that allows you to focus more on building the form as opposed to plumbing and handling all of the events, the logic, enabling fields, showing them, hiding them, and so forth and so on. So this is an interesting scenario that, or a use case, right, that you should check out if you're looking into extending list forms. Because that absolutely might turn up to be, the way you would build the next one.
Good 6-minute video on explaining how that can be done. Now, and then the last video is from Shane Young from the Power Apps 911. We talked about, actually, we had a good chat with Shane in the Power Platform conference. They had the expo there, and I had a chance to drop by. And we've known since like 2010 or something like that, because of his historic helping. He's been working with Microsoft for many, many years as well, so helping on things. But his latest blog post, video, right? Not blog post.
Yes, a blog video, a video.
Is 5 Power Apps best practices for early makers. So talking about those different options and the recommendations, which are then covered in here. So for example,
haven't we talked about it the last time though? I think we have, but it's actually so good that we thought we will talk about it
that's
twice.
true. Actually, we might have actually talked about it because it was already in September 13th. You are 100% correct. But really good clarifying things. And he didn't have a new video since the last recording because he's been in the Power Platform conference as well. So good. Anyway, I guess that's it for now for the articles and videos for this week. So a lot of Microsoft announcements related on Viva. The Ignite is coming, so there's going to be another round of a new announcement across the board, which is interesting. A lot of stuff to follow up on making sure that you're up to date on what's happening. We already went through what's going to happen this week. I guess that settles it. That's it, Waldek.
That's it. We talked more than enough already.
Nothing to talk
Yes,
about.
we talked more than enough already. You need to get back to your inbox, and I need to get back to work.
Yes, indeed. Excellent. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for or listening. You can use the video or the podcast option. Please do hashtag PnP Weekly in Twitter, so we know all of the cool stuff what you are writing about or doing videos about. It helps on surfacing them for others in the community. But other than that, thanks. Oh, yeah.
Maybe there is one more thing we haven't talked about. We are closing on October. And the one thing that there's October is the Hacktoberfest. So many repos under the PnP umbrella will be taking part in Hacktoberfest 2022. Yep. You can check out probably each owner of each repo will do their own announcements and amplifying the message and how you can help the best way. But that's a really interesting, a cool way for everybody. Like if you waited for a perfect chance to, set the first step towards doing work in open source, this is it. This is the time. Because like, at least if I can speak for ourselves and our team in CLI for M365, we have a bunch of new issues. We are ready with spec. They are simple. They are ready to start. The whole team is available to help you get started, submit PRs, and then you will get a cool thing. You will be able to show everybody that you've done cool work. You help the community driving products that are being used by many, many folks. You will get either a t-shirt or a tree in your name, and it will be just, a next great step in your career. Like you will now be a part of the open source world. So this is a really great time for everybody to start if you haven't done it already.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for the promo on that one, Waldek. But that sums it for this week. Thanks you everybody for watching and listening. We'll be back within a week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.